Hey, what's up, world? This is Samantha Lakin, social change agent, live from Kigali, Rwanda. This is my era. What about you?
This is my era podcast. We spark the minds that set the trends that change the world as we know. And it starts right now. So let's go. This is my era. Hosted by Kuda Biza. And yours truly, Mr. Alexander Starr. This is my era. Represents everybody who knows they want a better world and does something about it. This is our era. What about you?
Welcome once again to the This Is My Era podcast. My name is Mr. Alexander Starr. I got my co-host Kuda Biza. Kuda, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How about you, bro?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm feeling good. I'm excited. I feel empowered because today we have a fighter with us, a fighter for the people. She's making change in places that many of us couldn't even begin to relate. She's a Ph.D. candidate at the Strassler Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, Clark University, and she's been awarded enough prestigious fellowships to make your head spin. She's currently on a Fulbright Scholarship, leading studies and making change in post-genocide Rwanda. She's a board member, chairperson, published author, TEDx speaker, but most of all, she's an amazing person who genuinely cares about people. How do I know? Because she cared about me when I was a little bit lost in Rabat, Morocco. Samantha Lakin, how are you, my friend?
Thank you so much, Alexander and Kuda. Starr, it's a pleasure to be back with you. As you said, we met at the MCC 17 conference in Rabat, Morocco. I think I found you a little lost and a little hungry in a cafe, and it was such a pleasure to meet you there. Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
So let's talk about that real quick. I want to start on a light note because, middle of Rabat, Morocco. I got no cell signal, I got no GPS, but I'm in a group WhatsApp text with all the speakers and the delegates and diplomats speaking at the conference. And they're saying, we're going to meet at this restaurant at this time. It is no small task to navigate your way around Rabat, Morocco if you're not from there and you don't have GPS. So I get to this restaurant with my boy Gio, videographer, and we are literally there for an hour and a half, and nobody shows up. We're waiting. And about an hour and a half into our wait, I see this woman fully dressed in traditional Moroccan clothes, just staring at me from across the room. And I'm like, okay. I was on TV. I was on a French TV show, and they speak French in Morocco. I'm like, okay, I guess this woman saw me on TV, and she's just, she sees the stripes in my beard, and she's just staring at me. And then, so I'm just like, okay, whatever. Then I get a text. No, I didn't get a text. Then she just says, Alexander? And I'm like, Samantha? And we just realized that, we were both of the conference. But it was just so weird, and we had both, for some reason, not gotten the message that they completely switched the restaurant, and and we became friends. Samantha's fluent in French. I am not. Gio is not, and she literally just helped us out, man. We ordered food at where we were, and then we found our way to the next restaurant where everybody was. And Samantha, you just made the trip a lot more pleasant for us. It was a pleasure, stumbling across you because we had never met. We were in the same WhatsApp group chat, but we had never met. So. You blended in, but when you showed yourself, it was definitely a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, part of my strategy and part of what I do is really just making people feel comfortable. A lot of the work that I do in genocide studies, working with people who have been through traumatic experiences, as bad as genocide or, even less extreme sexual violence survivors, those who have been through torture, or even just other psychological trauma, making them feel comfortable and using your skills, right? I saw you guys were there. I saw you were a little frustrated, and I was like, hey, how can I make this experience better and even positive for these two guys? I didn't know you, but I knew that you were worth it because of the connections we had made. and the group we had been in. And I was happy to order in French and get us a taxi. And that night was great. We had some great music and great food at the end. So it ended up being wonderful.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing. So you're clearly making leaps and bounds in a field that's very heavy, to say the least. Justice for genocide survivors. Rwanda, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, and northern Uganda are all some of the places that you've impacted. How did you know that this is what you want to do? And what was your first step into that world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's interesting because oftentimes, people very young in their lives say, okay, I want to be a pediatrician in New York City, or I want to be a teacher in Los Angeles. They have a dream and they know what they want. A lot of people I find actually don't know exactly what they want, but they often know what they're good at or what they like to do and what they don't like to do. And that was the case with me. I never had a dream job or a dream path, but I knew I liked working with people. I knew I was able to help people feel comfortable and to help them share their own stories. I knew that I was really good at context and learning languages, learning contextual cases, learning, what's the culture like here? What are the proper ways to engage with people and make them want to talk to you and want to trust you? And so these were skills that I had from a very early age. And all through college, I had these skills, but again, no dream job. And so I started after college. I was in Teach for America, actually, which is a great program for anyone looking to gain skills in leadership, and especially in challenging positions, learning how to deal with challenging jobs. Teach for America is great. And after that, I actually did a Fulbright in Switzerland where I was working with Holocaust survivors. And what I really loved was working with victim-based testimony. And I was lucky because I felt like it was something I could do. It was definitely weird and different and bizarre, because I don't think a lot of people assume that they're going to work in post-conflict countries with people who have physical and emotional scars that are visible, whether you're doing a formal interview or whether you're just out drinking and dancing. Those scars come out and you can see that, which is really something that surprised me, actually. But the truth of the matter was I found myself actually having success in these situations, not only personal satisfaction, the friends I was making, the amazing people I got to know, but also how I could make an impact on other people's lives, how I was kind of able to access spaces and stories that other people hadn't been able to access by putting in the time, by gaining people's trust, by even speaking a little bit of Kinyarwanda and a lot of French helped me access these spaces and gain trust from people who really had felt very lost in the post-conflict recovery of certain countries, of Rwanda, northern Uganda, Burundi now in conflict. So just using the skills I originally had, that was how I got into it. And then the last thing that really pushed me toward this was witnessing where I could be successful and where I could be useful. I think it's part of our natural growth in life is to see where are our skills best needed. And for me, it was in a weird place, in a random place. But, I'm very thankful that I had the support and also was able to push myself out of my comfort zone in order to figure out how to relate to people who are a different race, a different nationality, different language speaking, different culture, different everything, yet figure out how to bring their stories to the policy sphere and help them get the services and get the kind of healing and justice that they need in the aftermath of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda.
Wow. So that's like, you said a lot and your heart speaks very loud and clear that, you just applied what you were good at, but it seems like you're just natural at it anyway. You're just being who you are and you're applying yourself to people who need a heart like yours, which I think is very important because it's, you subliminally and outwardly recognize that this is your era and you're doing something about it. What I want to know is, was there a time, like say when you first got started or even like halfway through or whatever, up to now, where you doubted yourself? Like, man, I haven't gone through anything like this. I can't relate. What kind of thoughts go through your mind when you're dealing with...
2 examples.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is that oftentimes people who we see, including myself and including you, Star, and Kuda too, we see confidence, we see natural ability. But people with confidence and natural ability, if they're smart and they've done something with it, they've actually cultivated that, right? It's something that maybe comes natural a little bit, but it's something where you take the natural ability you have and you actually cultivate it. So I've been doing a lot of public speaking training, language training, reading about the context, listening. You know, as much as I love to talk, a lot of my work involves listening, doing things that were completely out of my comfort zone, saying yes to going to places like funerals, different parts of the city where I wasn't sure what was going to happen or what the benefit was going to be. But I was like, hey, let me ride with it because it could end up helping me learn in some way. So I think that we often see people who are so perfect and we're like, oh my gosh, how did they get like that? But the truth is that we put in a lot of work to get this way, preparing speeches, preparing our research, looking up statistics, learning how to do public speaking, learning how to take time with people, learning who's valuable, right? Who can help. And also not just who can help us, but how we can help others and being generous. I think being generous was one of the main things for me, which is, you know, as much generosity as I've received, I try to put back out into the world, because if you're generous with your skills, whether it's editing someone's CV or putting them in touch with a hotel manager so they can get a job, all the way up to, you know, helping the Minister of Justice write a report, that generosity comes back to you, I truly believe. But to answer your question, which goes along with this whole, like, you got to cultivate your skills and you got to hone in on what you don't know, and recognize at first, what do I not know? And what do I need to do in order to get myself where I want to be? For sure, I get exhausted too. You know, I mean, when you deal with these subjects emotionally, and when you deal with a lot of people who are in need, even yourself, you know, I'm in need. I'm in need of friendship. I'm in need of support. I'm in need of someone to pat me on the back and tell me I did a good job today during a tough interview. You know, as strong as I am, I need that too. Yeah. And so surrounding myself by those people, and you'd be surprised by who the people who can give you support are. They're not always the ones with the money and the nice house. Sometimes the people who give you the most support are the ones who just see you for who you are and who have taken time to get to know you. And so relationships are very important in this field, because you'll be surprised by who ends up being your best friend, group of best friends, who ends up being your daily support in moments of self-doubt and, as I said, imposter syndrome. So Don't be fooled, those of you who are listening. We all have it and still have it. But I think by recognizing the weaknesses, number one, number two, supporting yourself with the right people who can really encourage you. And number three, being generous with your time and skills. All of those can really help support this work.
That's powerful. As I read your resume, you know, all of the things that you've been able to accomplish, you know, masters in arts and law, you know, the various roles that you serve on the boards of directors, boards of trustees, and so forth and so forth. I tend to wonder, like, you know, what's your goal setting and goal tracking process? Because for you to be able to actually do all of these things, I'm assuming these were once dreams that you're like, okay, this is the goal that I want to achieve, and then you actually went out to do it. So do you mind to, you know, share with us real quick, you know, the process that you go through as you're setting your goals and then, you know, taking that action to then actually track through, to follow through to achieve that goal?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. And I think it's really important for all of us to reflect on goal setting and actually how to achieve those goals. So for me, one of the things is no goal is too far in the future. The Fulbright was something I had wanted to do for 4 years, and I actually applied twice, and I was a finalist once and I didn't get it. And I waited and I applied again because I felt like, hey, if I'm a finalist, I'm probably qualified, and it might have been something of chance or something where I didn't get it. I'm going to apply again. And that's a risk, right? That's facing your failure and saying, I'm going to take it and do it again. I'm going to take what was good there, which was the finalist, and move forward. So that goal of having a Fulbright was very, very big to me. And it took 4 years for me to achieve the goal. In between, I was teaching and I was doing other things. But that goal was always in mind. So I was thinking about when would be the best time to reapply in my personal life and in my professional life. And it took me 4 years to realize the goal of getting my first Fulbright. And in 2011 and 2012, I was accepted as a Fulbrighter to Switzerland right as I had finished teaching and had been accepted to my master's program. So I was able to take a year kind of as a break or off of my quote unquote path and do the Fulbright. But that was a goal I had in mind for 4 years, and I decided not to give up because it was that important to me. So that's one thing, is that no goal is too big or too long term. We have to wait and be patient. If we have a goal we really want, it takes time, it takes cultivation, and it takes learning from our mistakes. That goal was 4 years out, and I got my second Fulbright this year, 5 years after that one. And so Fulbright's been really meaningful and really helpful to me. And these goals have been over a 10-year time period. So just thinking about that gives some perspective. The second thing is I'm a huge list maker. Every day I have a list of what I do, of what I need to accomplish. I have lists that go over the week. Being organized helps me accomplish a lot. I feel that the better organization I have, and I like to write down on paper. So I have paper lists of what I do every day. If I don't get something done, I move it. But that really helps keep me organized and focused. And I've seen your guys' planner for This Is My Era. And I personally love it because I think that handwriting actually helps you remember better and helps you visually organize if you're that kind of person. And so handwriting, even though people love to use their iPhones and iCalendars, which I do, use Google Calendars, making those lists every day helps me stay focused for that day or that week when it's particularly busy. In terms of big goals, again, I never have an ideal, like I want this fellowship or this professorship at this university. I kind of like to see what comes. But when those opportunities come, there's always an evaluation, right? Is this in my path? Is it something that I can dedicate the proper time to right now? Like, serve on the board of Survivors Fund. I decided to do it. It's a volunteer position, but I believe in the work of Survivors Fund because they always have psychosocial healing when they work with genocide survivors. And I felt I could volunteer my time to that. There are sometimes I have to say no. And that's the truth of the matter is you might get invited for an opportunity that sounds really cool, but if you can't truly dedicate to it or it's going to kind of derail you in some way, it might be a moment to say no because something else will come in the future. So honestly, the goal setting process is really good to do it. But at the same time, there's always an instance of chance, of chance that you'll meet someone who will invite you to do something and you'll be really happy about it, or that you'll say no, knowing that it's a risk to turn something down and to take something else later. It's kind of a calculation in the moment that happens too. And sometimes you don't even know what your goals are until you start working, right? I didn't know that I aimed to be someone, knowledgeable about Rwanda and about post-conflict and transitional justice until I started my Fulbright at my grad school. I thought maybe I wanted to work for government, which I might still do. Or I thought maybe I wanted to work for, an NGO. I didn't know. But it wasn't until I started on the path that I realized what I liked and what I don't like. And if I can say one thing about internships too, I had a couple students do internships that I placed them at, and they came to me and said, "Oh, Samantha, this was so bad. They couldn't manage me. I could have done so much more. I didn't like this working style." And I say to them, well, the internship process is just as much about learning what you don't like as much as what you do like, and what the problems are in organizations as much as what the good things are. So if you have a terrible internship or a terrible job, it actually teaches you just as much as when you have a great job or a great internship or a great boss. And so I think it's all about perspective, right? Goal setting comes with embracing that chance, but also pushing yourself to be organized, to be dedicated. When you take something on, do it 100%. And also to thinking about the long term, as I said, like no goal is too far in the distance. Just keep it there in your mind and figure out kind of what's the curvy path to get there at one point. So that's what I'd say to my perspective on goal setting.
So Samantha, in your journey in achieving these goals, have there been people who've been instrumental in getting you there? So like mentors, other peers or, and if so, how important or instrumental have they been in the process?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I have been so lucky to have been the mentee, formally and informally, of tens and tens and tens of incredible people. I've never really done a lot of formal mentorship. I just have found people who have said, look, Samantha, I like your perspective. I like your writing. I like what you're doing. I want to invest in you. You know, can I write a recommendation, or can I help you with something? But I'll give you one instance. Before I came to Rwanda, people had told me it would be pretty impossible to do any research here, that it was very hard to get people to talk about these things that had happened to them during genocide. People might not trust me. I might hit, bureaucratic barriers. They were really discouraging me. But I had three professors, specifically three women, who gave me advice and encouraged me, who shared materials with me, who really helped give me a picture of what Rwanda was even before I went. And most of those things that they said, I didn't even understand until I got here. And what was really great was that when I got here, their voices stuck in my head. And I started to realize that the things they were telling me made a lot of sense. And I'm glad I had listened to them and done the research. I mean, I almost failed my finals that period. I was preparing to go to Rwanda for the summer. And I remember I spent so much more time engaging with the literature and preparing with my mentors than even studying for exams, which is an honest truth. Now, I didn't fail, but I felt like I might have. So those mentors were really instrumental. But I think that mentorship comes in lots of different cases. I mean, I have mentors who are younger than me. I have mentors who are much older. I have mentors who are famous and not famous. But I think that mentorship has been incredibly instrumental, especially people connecting me, people who connect me to those who I interview, who connect me to those who have written books, who are journalists, who are authors, who can give me some insight onto a piece of what I'm researching, a piece of what I'm doing that I can't access from the internet or from a film or, from somewhere else. And those people who share their experiences honestly with me, both good and bad. So mentorship has been incredibly important, but not only professionally, personally as well. I've been traveling a lot and staying in different places where I don't know anyone or many people. So also the supporters who have given me a hot meal, hot shower, a good bed to sleep in, those people who have been generous to me and supporting from behind are just as important as mentors and people I look up to. Those people who have been generous with their homes and their time to help me be successful and to say, I know you're tired, but you can do it. Just come and relax with us and then go on with your journey. Those have been really important too. So it's kind of a non-traditional form of mentorship, but really important.
Right. I mean, which to kind of summarize what you're saying, you can get mentorship from everyday life. You can get mentorship from people just doing good things for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the scope of somebody super successful in a particular field that you're interested in, like coaching you. It could just be like somebody that's giving you, a lift up when you're having a challenge in your day. That could be a mentor. They're mentoring you through your everyday life. And I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Absolutely. I'll just tell you one thing. There's a woman who's a genocide survivor. She's about my parents' age, about 59 years old, and she works at San Femi Church in Kigali, Rwanda. And she is someone who I interviewed twice. She's the one who holds the keys to the church. She does a lot of kind of caring work for this church. The church was built in 1913 and has a really interesting history of genocide and post-genocide in Rwanda. And it has thousands of members. But she's a local woman, has lived in Rwanda her whole life. She speaks French in Kinyarwanda, doesn't speak English. And I can't tell you how many times I've called her and just said to her, Mathilde, I am tired. I want to rest. Can you open the church for me and just sit with me for 20 minutes? Because I just kind of want to take a break from the outside world. And how many times I've asked her, tell me why people do this in Rwanda, or tell me what this means. I heard this in an interview. I don't understand. And her local knowledge and her generosity, and we're different religions, we're different religions, we're different a lot of things, but she's been a huge mentor to me. And actually, I didn't know how much I'd impacted her life until she saw me back after a year of hiatus in Rwanda. And she actually cried to see me in life. You know, she's like, my daughter, I can't believe you're really here.
Aww.
And I was so moved because I was like, wow, you are so thrilled to see me again. And yeah, this woman personally has been a mentor because of her care. And again, mentors don't have to be the big names. Sometimes the big names don't even make the best mentors because they don't have time. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. It's up to each person to recognize the value and the ability to be supported in all kinds of people. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
Bars. That's dope. Good stuff. So it's been really eye-opening to talk with you, and I feel like we've gotten a level of humility in this conversation, and you know, I feel like we've gained a lot just from hearing your perspectives on the world, and you come with such an interesting and unique paradigm, and from such a unique area of expertise. I think that this episode can apply to our lives in a very like personal level. We thank you so much for sharing your time and your story and you know, your energy with us.
Thank you so much for having me here. If I can say one more thing, it's that, you know, the field of genocide studies or post-conflict studies seems so niche. It seems so specific. But the truth is that, like you said, these lessons apply to everyone, no matter what field you're in. For me, I have a lot of friends here and in the whole world in Rwanda who are musicians, artists, who are biologists, who are chemists, who are people working in tourism, hotel, medical doctors, you know, you name it. And we always talk about these kinds of things. How can we uplift the people around us, whoever they are? And keeping that diverse circle reminds me that my work isn't this specific thing, you know, that's going to be a book to sit on a shelf and be read in one university class about genocide studies. But as you said, the work is about humanity and human resilience. Yeah. And I'm really thankful that I've been able to kind of apply what I've learned in a broader sense. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so thankful to be on this podcast today, is to share that with people in all fields and people in all areas and all periods of their journey, you know, all stages of their journey. So once again, Star and Kuda, thank you guys so much again.
Of course.
So Samantha, I have a couple more questions real quick. So the first question is, you mentioned that, you know, you need to take your skills, you know, where they're best needed. So for you, very brief, very short, what's next? What's your next destination? Unless if you're planning on staying in Rwanda permanently, where else do you feel like your skills will be, will be benefited the most?
Yeah, totally. So I think there are a couple of ways to answer this, and I'll be very brief. My husband and I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the Boston area, and I think we're going to stay there with always, ideally, trips back to Rwanda and work in Rwanda. But I think the things I love are teaching, are connecting with people, and are helping the people who are underrepresented, sharing needs to policymakers. So I don't know where that'll be. Maybe I'll be called up in Syria or in Burundi or, you know, somewhere else. But I think it's the skills, the teaching, the connecting with people, and the translating people's needs and desires to policy that will always stick with me. So I don't know where that'll be, but I hope that Rwanda will always be a part of my life, and that I'll always be able to be a teacher.
Nice. The other question I had for you is that, you know, I think you shared a little bit about kind of like, you know, the genocide and how these people have suffered. You know, for me, the exposure that I've gotten for Rwanda, although I was born in Zimbabwe, I've never been to Rwanda, but watching Hotel Rwanda gave me a little bit of perspective of some of the atrocities that happen in the country. In your own words, what were some of the shocking details of like things that have happened? And you don't need to maybe get too graphic if it's too much, but I think to maybe just kind of like frame up of like, wow, these are some of the things that other people are going through, I think helps frame up the realities out there. And I'm saying that because there's some people out there who probably haven't even left their small town, right? Or left the US or left the country, and they take their day-to-day life sometimes for granted because that's all they know. But, when you travel and go to other places, it somewhat opens up your eyes and removes the veil to then show you like, hey, if you thought like your experience was bad, there's some people out there who are actually, worse off. And one experience that touched me was that I had been in the US for like 12 years and then went back to Zimbabwe, to visit. And it was at a time where the economy was bad. People couldn't even buy anything in the grocery stores and whatnot. But I would go to, some of these rural places, and the people there were happy. So they didn't have the, materialistic stuff and things like that, but they had each other. They were happy. And for me, it kind of like made me kind of like reflect to, sometimes, when you don't have Wi-Fi, it seems like the world is ending, but there are some people out there in far worse off situations, but they're still happy. So sorry for the long-winded question, but I just felt like it's good, and it's good for people to maybe learn and understand.
I think it's a great observation that you made. And I think for me, especially in my academic sense and in my personal sense of dealing and working in Rwanda day in and day out, and in other countries that are post-conflict, I don't believe in comparing victimhoods, right? So everyone's victimization is bad. And no matter if you feel as if you're a victim or as if you've been harmed or hurt in some way, that's bad for you. And everybody deals with it differently. So for me, like someone who's never left their own town, maybe they feel privileged or maybe they feel really longing to know what people are experiencing. So it's really cool that you're giving me the opportunity to talk about this. So in Rwanda in 1994, there was a genocide of about 100 days between April 7th, 1994 and July. And essentially there was an extremist government led by Hutu extremists who planned to kill and annihilate all Tutsi minority individuals living in the country. Tutsi and Hutu are different groups in Rwanda. And the government had been kind of planning and preparing this genocide, as all genocides are. So on April 6th, the president of Rwanda, the Hutu extremist president, Habyarimana, his plane was shot down. And the next day, the genocide, what they call the big genocide, started, including massacre and killing.
That. What are the key differences? What are the cultural differences between Hutu and Tutsi that make them so, that made this thing happen?
I think it's skin color, right?
No,
some
not at all.
Light-skinned and some are dark-skinned?
Not at all, actually. So it's a huge misconception that Hutu and Tutsi are different ethnic groups. What actually happened, and I'll try to be brief, is that Hutu and Tutsi individuals speak the same language. They both speak Kinyarwanda. They've both been in Rwanda for, centuries, for a really long time. What ended up happening during Belgian colonial rule in the 1930s to the 1950s was that there was a class system. Tutsi generally owned cows. Stereotypically, they're taller and skinnier. Hutus were generally shorter. And Hutus were pastoralists dealing with farmland. And so these kinds of categories were mostly class-based categories, and they shifted, right? So people could become wealthier and own cows, or they could become poor and lose their cows. They could shift from Hutu to Tutsi. And the main thing to mention is that during the colonial period, these affiliations were not very salient. They weren't important. People didn't consider themselves Hutu or Tutsi. They considered themselves by their clan. And there were more than 15 clans in Rwanda. So during the Belgian period, and as World War II was happening and the Holocaust, there became an obsession with race ideology and with racial categorization. And so Hutu and Tutsi became fixed classes or fixed races in Rwanda based on Belgian rule. If you had more than 10 cows, you were considered a Tutsi, and if you had less than 10 cows, you were considered a Hutu, and these things were also started to be put on identity cards. So it was a huge kind of social change that led to people feeling Hutu or Tutsi, people being really Hutu or Tutsi. And from there, since 1959 and independence in Rwanda in 1962 and 63, Hutu were a majority in the country, more than 80%, as said on the identity cards, and they discriminated, the government especially, against the Tutsi. Tutsi had limited places in school, limited places in work and jobs. A lot of times huts were burned, houses were burned, and many Tutsi even left the country as refugees. So the genocide in 1994 was actually a result of many years of discriminatory policies from an extremist government. That's not to say all Hutus were involved, right? Or all Hutus were involved. It's not true. But there was an extremist sect of Hutus that were targeting these enemies. They call them internal enemies. So that's kind of where these distinctions come from my understanding of the history. So 1994, the big genocide breaks out, and about 800,000 Tutsi and what we call moderate Hutu, so those Hutus who were not aligned with extremists, many of whom saved Tutsi or were married to a Tutsi husband or a Tutsi wife, had Tutsi children because there was a lot of intermarriage. These people were murdered, and it was very brutal. It was what we call a low-tech genocide, meaning that people were murdered often with machetes, with farm tools. They were rounded up in groups in the bush and kind of killed on the roads or nearby, en masse, thrown into mass graves. So it was a highly brutal process. It wasn't like World War II or the Holocaust, where the killing was kind of distant, right? Where people were put in, in gas chambers and these fake showers and killed. Nobody physically had to kill them that way. They just switched a button and the Zyklon B went out. This was a highly intense form of murder, which is very anti-cultural in Rwanda. So it was almost like a blip in the culture of Rwanda because Rwandans are incredibly respectful and have a high value for life. So it was something that was really prepared and in the minds of people to be able to go so far as to kill their neighbors, their own wives, their own children, their own husbands, people who they really had lived pretty well with for long periods of time. So the genocide ended in July of 1994. The Rwandan Patriotic Army had come from abroad. They were exiled, mostly Tutsi, exiled, and they came in and took over from the extremist government, pushed the extremists out, and from there stopped the killing, stopped the genocide, and started rebuilding the country. Survivors and others describe the country as it was dead right after the genocide. Imagine no infrastructure, no roads, bodies everywhere. Unfortunately, dogs, eating corpses, really sad, really terrible stuff. And so today, we do see a mix of very successful Rwandans and Rwandans who are still poor. But as a whole, Rwanda is doing much better than its neighbors. There's peace here. I can walk around at 1:00 in the morning and be safe. Survivors still suffer from HIV and AIDS, children born of rape, the fact that they lost primary livelihoods, breadwinners in their family. Though people still suffer, but a lot have been able to go to school through government assistance for survivors. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But we do see a lot of progress, and that's the reality here on the ground.
Wow.
Was that an okay answer for this?
Damn, that puts things into perspective.
So just to say, when I come here, it's really hard for me because I live in a local home and I love it and I love my local family, but 3 days without water sometimes is really hard. But then I go on an interview and someone, lifts up their shirt and shows me the machete cut strewn across their stomach, and I'm like, okay, I'll go back to my home with no water. I'm cool. So these are kinds of the secrets that people live with, especially the unseen scars. And if you listen to my TED talk from TEDx Fulbright 2015, which is on YouTube if you Google my name, and I think you guys might be able to post the link as well. I talk a lot about the hidden, the unseen, and the known scars, and how I've dealt with that personally working in this field. But I do a lot of times get people showing me physical scars during the interviews, and I'm always shocked because I'm not asking or expecting to see it. But sometimes they're like, oh yeah, this happened to me, and there are just machete cuts and bullet wounds, and it just is.
Yeah, I watched the TEDx talk, and all of it is striking. But then when you said, I saw the scar, like a machete impalement scar on this man's head, a friend of yours, I believe, that you said he got when he was 5. So someone stabbed him in the head with a machete when he was 5.
Yeah, they hacked him.
Yeah. That's just, it's unthinkable, damn near unspeakable. But, I commend you for being up and close and personal with the people who have gone through these things and for changing their lives. You truly are making it their era. Continue pouring your heart into these people, Samantha.
Thank you. Your encouragement is what will push me this week, this month, this year, and this era. Thank you.
Kuda, you got anything else, man?
Thank you. No, I'm tapped out.
Good stuff, Samantha. Thank you for being with us.
Well, let's go! This is my era! Oh, yeah! This is my era! This is my era! Come on! This is my era! This is my era! What about you? Everybody runs the race. Some have what it takes, and others don't make it through. What about you? Stand up when they call your name. Stand out when you do your job. Let greatness notice you. If you're just wishing for glory, then what are you asking? Victory ain't sweet if you don't live through the pain. So many great ones before me found glory everlasting. This what I came to do, came to be. Cause see, this is my era. Oh yeah, this is my era. This is my era. Come on, this is my era. This is my era. Come on, this is my era. What about you?
This is my era, this is my era. The mission and the vision never been so clearer. Seems like the world ain't getting no better. If you wanna see a change, take a look in the mirror now. You possess the key to unlock it. Open up the door, opportunities knocking. You can't deny, on this road that we're walking, there's gonna be some obstacles, but we'll keep on marching. Some will doubt you, even talk about you, but this world wouldn't be the same without you. Golden people on the rise, we know our value. Reaching the impossible, we'll show you how to. Don't know about you, but I know about me. I was born with everything I need to succeed. Living out the dreams, what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to be. Cause see,
this is my era. 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 What about you? The world is counting on me, yeah. To be that change that we all wanna see, yeah. Whoa. And as long as I'm living and breathing, I reach for the sky, giving living a meaning. That's what